Good morning. My name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for International Private Enterprise, and thank you for joining CIPE's inaugural Youth Leadership Conference. This half-day event is the first of what we hope will be an annual conference about the most pressing challenges facing youth today and private sector-led solutions to some of those challenges. Young people around the world have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as such, governments, civil society, and other stakeholders need to urgently prioritize integration of young people into public life and the labor market in order to generate sustainable economies and societies. And the business community is a crucial player in ensuring that young people are not left behind and are supported and empowered. For those of you who may not know, CIPE, as we call ourselves, is one of the four core institutes of the National Endowment for Democracy, and we're an affiliate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We work with business leaders, policymakers, and civil society to strengthen democracy around the globe through private enterprise and market-oriented reform. Youth are a key stakeholder in a democratic society, and CIPE has a history of engaging with young people as future leaders. We've helped youth advocate more effectively and have worked with young entrepreneurs to allow them to contribute to local economic ecosystems. Today, we're excited to showcase our Youth Leadership Program, a new initiative that we launched earlier this year given the economic, political, and social crises that have resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic. CIPE selected 5 outstanding youth leaders from Nigeria, Rwanda, the Philippines, Zambia, and Kenya. Each leader conducted either an advocacy or research project around the themes of youth and private enterprise or youth and democracy. These leaders will share their insights during this event, and the Youth Leaders Corner on this conference site contains more information and materials about each of their individual projects. I'm also honored to have our keynote speaker, Hanni Rosenbaum, Executive Director of Business at OECD, joining us this morning. Hanni and her team have been providing thought leadership and recommendations on how companies can support youth. We'll also have a panel discussion that will provide perspectives from our partners in Asia, Europe, and Africa on current youth issues and how each panelist and their organizations have addressed them in their own local context. Overall, I hope today's Youth Leadership Conference will foster dialogue, spark ideas, and encourage bold thinking about ways in which the private sector and multi-stakeholder collaboration can meet the needs of today's youth. The youth of today are the workforce of tomorrow, and businesses of all sizes and business associations have a vital role to play in their future. This is both an economic imperative and a moral one. We hope you enjoy today's conference, and please take the time to network with attendees on the conference platform and engage with the speakers during the question and answer portions of each session. We look forward to continuing these important discussions with you in the future. It's now my pleasure to turn things over to Anna Kompanek, who will be hosting today's keynote speaker. Anna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome again to everybody joining us online. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, Hanni Rosenbaum, the Executive Director of Business at OECD. OECD, of course, standing for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development based in Paris, France. Hanni leads BIAC's business diplomacy efforts with the OECD and its member countries. She guides strategy and policy engagements with the OECD, ensuring that they reflect the views of BIAC member organizations around the world. She joined BIAC in 1997, over the years having gathered substantive and really impressive experience across a number of important policy topics, youth empowerment being one of them. In fact, BIAC recently launched its Business for Youth campaign to share examples from its global network of how the private sector can support opportunities for youth to enter the job market and to deal with challenges specific to the COVID-19 pandemic and recovery. Hanni actually wrote on that topic in a recent blog. You can find a link to it in her bio on our event website. With that, let me turn it over to Hanni for her keynote remarks, and we will have a few minutes afterwards for a Q&A. So if you have a question Feel free to enter it into the chat during Hanni's presentation, and we'll have a few minutes to continue the discussion. Thank you so much, and Hanni, over to you.
Thank you very much. And dear colleagues, it is a real pleasure for me to be here on behalf of Business at OECD, also known as BIAC here today. Youth is an issue I do not only care about personally, it's really close to my heart, but it's also a key issue for Business at OECD as an organization. So let me first say a few words of who we are. Sorry, can you hear? Can you hear me? Okay, so let me first say a few words about who we are. Our institutional members are the national business and or employers organizations in OECD countries, and through them companies and other business organizations. And we are the officially recognized business voice to the OECD, with a global membership representing over 7 million companies of all sizes from across sectors from OECD countries and beyond. Now, as the institutional stakeholder, Business at OECD works very closely with the OECD on the wide range of policy areas, including trade, investment, taxation, digital, environment, education, to name just a few. Now, I'd also like to note that we have benefited a lot from a very close and very constructive cooperation with CIPE in several policy fields, including corporate governance, development, anti-corruption, digital policies, and responsible business conduct. So, of course, I was personally very pleased to hear that CIPE is also looking into the topic of youth, which in my view should be a priority for all of us. So I'm pleased to contribute to today's event on this Youth Leadership Conference. We fully support the shared objective of integrating young people into the labor market, which is not only important from an ethical perspective, but it's also an essential pillar to the dynamism of labor markets, and it's critical for the cohesion of our economies and our societies at large. So let me also just underline that the youth unemployment and youth issue was already an important problem, an important challenge before the COVID-19 crisis. But the impacts of COVID-19 have had additional major effects on youth around the world. The pandemic has now, in my view, created an emergency for youth, and it has significantly limited access of young people to the labor market. Now, as we all know, the share of young people not in employment, not in education, not in training has risen in many countries around the world and has not yet returned to pre-crisis levels, despite ambitious support programs that many governments have put in place. I have one slide on the screen. Let me just show you this one. As you can see from the graph on the left-hand side, unemployment rates of young people, so young people is aged between 15 and 29, is at a very high level in many OECD countries. There are, of course, as you can see from the slide, vast differences between the countries, but the total OECD unemployment rate had reached 14% for the 15 to 29-year-olds, equal to 23.4 million unemployed young people. This is simply not acceptable. Now, young people were also confronted with a double challenge as they faced both disruptions in access to education and workplace learning and unprecedented challenges to enter the labor market. Now, evidence from the beginning of the crisis demonstrates that young people were the group that was most affected by the rise in unemployment between February and March 2020. Also, due to significant loss of drop in income, young people are more likely to fall into poverty as there are fewer savings to fall back on. In addition, as illustrated by previous economic shocks, young people graduating in times of crisis find it more difficult to find decent jobs and income, which are likely to delay their path to financial independence and really getting a foot into the labor market and building up a career. Now, again, looking at the slide, as you can see from the chart on the right-hand side, prevalence of depression and anxiety among young people also surged with the crisis and actually continues to increase in some countries. As we all know, many young people were significantly challenged by physical distancing measures, remote learning, a drop in income, and often complicated situations at home, which has in many cases had major impacts on mental health. And the chart shows very well that young people have been more impacted than people in other age groups. Now, the OECD has identified mental health and disposable income alongside employment as the top 3 concerns for young people today. As you can see on the right-hand graph, the share of individuals who indicate that their mental health has been affected by the crisis has reached really worrying levels, with young people often being at the top of those reporting mental health issues. Now, this was just like, a very, very sad explanation of the situation young people now face. Let me just now turn to what needs to be done. And to start with, I'd really like to underline that there is no doubt that the youth challenge can only be addressed if all actors are working constructively together. All actors, this involves governments, it involves business, educational institutions, and also youth organizations. We need to hear from the young people what their concerns are and how we can help. We must ensure that young people are given a chance, and we must ensure that there is no lost generation. We must ensure that they get the support that they need to be fully involved in social and economic development of our societies. Young people are not only the future, they're also the present, and we need to take care of them now, and we cannot postpone urgent action to be taken. We therefore call upon governments to take this on as a priority. We need governments to support young people, and we also need governments to support companies, to provide companies with incentives to increase hiring of young people and to create a business environment that is conducive to job creation. Because we firmly believe that business needs to play a role, but governments also need to help business to play this role. Now, also we need a strong role for international organizations. International organizations like the OECD have a key role to play here. Now, I'm very pleased to say that at the Ministerial Council meeting this year, the OECD introduced an updated Youth Action Plan. It is proposed to develop an OECD recommendation, an OECD Council recommendation, which is a legal instrument with high political standing, to promote a government-wide strategy to strengthen youth policies and outcomes across relevant policy areas. Now, there are several key areas in support of young people that have been identified for this Council recommendation. And these include ensuring that young people acquire relevant skills, supporting young people in their transition to the labor market, combating social exclusion and promoting youth well-being, strengthening the relationship between young people and political institutions, and finally, reinforcing administrative capacities to deliver youth-responsive services and address age-based inequalities. Now, this was about the OECD, and now let me turn to why there is a business case, why this is a real business issue. Now, as was mentioned at the beginning, and thank you very much for the introduction, we at Business at OECD identified the issue of youth as a priority early on, and we agreed to join forces with other members, with our wider membership. Now, earlier this year, we therefore launched our own Business for Youth campaign. And what we wanted to do with this Business for Youth campaign is to share proactive, positive examples from our global network to support youth, highlight what measures our members have taken, highlight how our members have worked with governments, what has worked, what has been really helpful, making an impact on the ground to help young people enter the labor market and inspire further action. So we encourage you all to visit our website to learn about best practices, share them, and maybe contribute additional examples. So we have on our website examples from national business organizations in OECD countries and beyond. We have examples from specific companies, and I would strongly recommend you to take a look. We hope that they're helpful and will inspire further action. I would therefore also like to underline that many companies, their ability to compete in global markets really depends on access to skills and talent. So there is really a business case to worry and care about youth now, in addition to the ethical considerations, as I mentioned. Now, while recognizing, of course, that the capacities of what companies can do to offer employment opportunities varies from company to company, from sector to sector. It's different for an SME than it is for an MNE. But many business leaders can and are taking already important steps to support young job seekers. We are convinced that sharing their successes can be an inspiration for others, and many of them are available in this special section on our website that I mentioned. Now, further to a very active cooperation with the OECD, we have also joined the OECD Stand by Youth campaign, which had a launch event on July 8th, and which brought together OECD and business organizations to discuss together additional concrete actions that the private sector has taken. Together with the OECD and other business organizations, we have launched a call for action to create opportunities for the young, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds. Now, throughout our campaign, we were very pleased to see that many companies have taken proactive action. Yet, I'd also like to underline why we need new initiatives, which are really important. We also have to think about how we can scale up existing efforts to address the impacts of the current crisis. This includes internships, apprenticeships, etc., which have been in place for a long time, but which are now more important than ever. Now, while we were developing our youth campaign, we also collected the recommendations that our members had to governments. And let me just briefly underline the key recommendations that came out of our survey from our Business for Youth campaign, which are based entirely on input from our members. First, we would like to underline that there is a need to help students with a smooth school-to-work transition. As young people are about to enter the labor market or preparing for higher education, they need a good understanding of what the opportunities are that specific academic and vocational pathways can offer, where job opportunities exist and where job opportunities don't exist, in particular in light of the academic shifts that have resulted from the COVID-19 crisis. Second, we believe now more than ever, we need early experience of the workplace. It's really essential. So internships are an important avenue in this respect. They've very much suffered during the COVID crisis, and it was very difficult to get an internship, but nevertheless extremely important. And they can also provide companies with a really good opportunity to collect fresh ideas and identify future employees. Apprenticeships provide another important route to support young people as they enter the labor market, and they can help address the mismatch between the skills people have and the skills employers need. Again, apprenticeships have been in place for a long time, but we now need government support even more urgently to make sure that the companies have the right incentives and can support young people finding a way into the labor market. Third, we must foster youth entrepreneurship and nurture students' entrepreneurial skills and knowledge of business early on, so it starts at school. Young entrepreneurs often require tailored training and mentoring to develop the skills and experience to succeed, which should be complemented by improved access to finance, which is also major challenges for youth entrepreneurs. Fourth, of course, we need business action for youth, increasingly on upskilling and training programs to tackle the skills gap which exists, and which again, due to the changing nature of sectors, across sectors of COVID-19, is even more evident. Through our own workforce programs and dialogue with the public sector, we believe that business can help develop relevant and practical education and training programs that meet the needs of businesses and the young. And so this is why really the business-government dialogue is extremely important. And lastly, of course, I'd like to highlight the importance of digital skills. The digital transformation rapidly accelerated during COVID-19, and young people's employability is now increasingly dependent on their digital skills. So we have seen customized learning materials, digital mentoring, investment in training teachers, managers. It's really more important than ever to prepare young people for tomorrow's labor market. As I said before, effective and continuous public-private dialogue and cooperation will be critical to give young people a chance, align skills needs, boost the talent pipeline, and build stronger businesses. Let me also highlight that young people often demonstrate strong motivation for addressing global challenges such as climate change, among many others, or threats to democratic institutions. However, young people often remain underrepresented in public dialogue, and it remains crucial to promote meaningful youth engagement and strengthen the trust between generations. This is also why I was particularly enthusiastic to see the work that CIPE is doing in this area. Let me close by saying that words really need to be followed by action. We at Business at OECD are a relatively small international team, but we have kept our internship program alive during the crisis. We employ young staff whenever we can, be it for project positions or be it for longer term positions. I personally believe that we can all work a lot and do a lot for our young colleagues, and that they need to be part of the mix, of the staff mix. The staff mix needs to have all the generations, and young people play a very important role. And I'd also like to mention that even small steps matter, but together I do believe that we can make a difference. So thank you very much again for including me. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these open remarks, and I wish you a very successful discussion, very successful event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hanni, for those wonderful remarks. You definitely highlighted some of the key issues that CIPE is focused on, such as the importance of public-private dialogue on those issues, such as the importance of developing employable and entrepreneurship skills in young people, a large part of it being digital skills. In the few minutes we have left, one question I had, out of all the experiences that you've seen come through the Business for Youth initiative, are there any specific examples that come to mind of particularly successful partnerships between private sector or government, or any other type of initiative that sort of stands out to you as maybe worth for other countries to take a look at and emulate?
Yeah, I mean, there's, again, I encourage you to look at our website, but there are a lot of very important partnerships. I mean, first, the partnership between, and I don't want to name specific countries because there was so many good examples, between universities and business organizations, both regional and national, to identify, where are there openings, where are the skills gaps. Another good partnership I found in the area of internships, and that is actually from our Latin American observer organization. They created a network of different business organizations across Latin American countries, where they could also develop an international internship program to see if, I mean, there's a lack of internship programs here. Maybe you can go to another country and spread the good news and make sure that somebody who can't find something in his or her region can go to another region and country. I'd also like to mention as another good initiative, recognition programs. We had some member organizations that recognized companies that really stuck out very positively in terms of employing young people, be it through summer projects, be it through intern projects. That's why I personally believe it's so important to share these examples, which can give maybe some inspiration for others. I mean, the situation is different from country to country. What you can do in country X doesn't work in country Y, of course. And it's a problem that is of global nature. So I'm not saying all these examples are transferable, but I very much believe in that we have to build things up. We have to learn from good examples and then share it. And again, I think partnership is the key. And partnership should be looked at in a very broad manner. So it's, of course, business and education institutions, businesses and governments, but there are also other stakeholders. And as I said during my presentation, also direct discussion with youth is important. We need to hear from the young what their main requirements are, how they think they can help and be a constructive partner in the discussions.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to ask you, or maybe also point out to our audiences, another OECD initiative that just concluded, the OECD Youth Week. Throughout last week, there were a number of sessions and discussions on those topics. I'm not sure to what extent you personally were involved in organizing it, but if there are any takeaways or if there's anything else you can tell us about this event, it may be also of interest to our audiences.
Okay, no, great. I mean, first of all, let me say I was really, really excited that the OECD had an entire Youth Week. It was widely publicized and it was really shown to the world that the OECD is caring about youth. We had a number of speakers there. We had actually, I mean, one of my colleagues, Jack, who was also with me here at the office. He's under 30, so he could speak in the panel of the under 30s. When they contacted me for a speaker, I said, sure, I can speak. And then said, no, you can't speak because you're over 30. So they had like an entire panel just organized, for the young. which frankly I found really good because, as I said before, we have to hear from the young. Then they had a couple of sessions organized, with entrepreneurs. We had the chair of our SME working party for small, medium-sized enterprises there, and a number of other speakers. What came out of this is what they wanted to do is to have a very collective process in also getting input to this council recommendation that I mentioned that they will develop. And so I think it was a very helpful series of meetings to get perspectives from the young directly, from companies, important companies, which have a lot of resources, from business organizations, from trade unions. There's also our counterpart, actually, there's BIAC and then there's TUAC, the Trade Union Advisory Committee to the OECD. They also have their own youth program. They also have their own initiatives. So they were obviously involved. And then from our side, we also we tried to get the SME perspective in because, as I said, small steps matter. And I think everybody should be involved in this. So it was a very helpful series of discussions. And I hope that some who are at this meeting today could also join. But really great initiative to really show that the OECD is at the center of these discussions and it is taking input from all the partners to develop this council recommendation, which will hopefully be a strong instrument and which will show the way for governments around the world of what they have to do for youth.
Thank you so much for that. Again, I would encourage our audiences to visit the website of the OECD Youth Week and all the other resources and initiatives mentioned by Hanni in her excellent remarks. I believe we are at time. So all that is left for me to do is thank you again, Hanni. It was wonderful to have you join us virtually. Maybe one day soon we will be able to reconnect in person. In the meantime, many thanks again, and thank you to our audience. Please stay with us as we transition to the next session where you will be hearing from one of our youth leaders. And I will also reconnect with you later during a panel. Thank you all.